My name is Sophie Walker, and I just turned 33. For most of my life, I've been the quiet one, the responsible one, the one who worked long hours to pay her bills and save every last penny. While my younger sister Savannah lived in the spotlight with her flawless beauty and charming personality, I kept my head down, buried in spreadsheets and tax reports. But today, everything changed. I sat at the kitchen table in our family's home, the same place I used to do my homework as a kid, only this time, the conversation was anything but normal. My mother, her voice sharp with urgency, stared at me over her cup of coffee. "You need to sell your apartment, Sophie," she said, her tone as cold as the steel she always carried. "Savannah needs it for her divorce." I blinked, unable to process the words at first. The apartment I'd worked so hard for, the apartment I'd sacrificed years of late nights, weekend shifts, and peanut butter sandwiches to afford. My own little sanctuary in downtown Columbus, the one thing I could call mine, was suddenly up for grabs. "What? Mom, are you serious?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You want me to sell my place to fund Savannah's divorce?" Her eyes narrowed, as though it should be obvious. "Yes, Savannah is going through something incredibly difficult. Cameron Blackwell wants to take everything from her. She needs the best legal representation, and the Blackwell family has the money to bury us if we don't act fast." "How much are we talking here?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "At least $85,000 for a retainer fee," my mother answered. I almost choked on my breath. $85,000? "Yes, and it's a reasonable price considering the stakes," she said, as if it were no big deal. I glanced at my father, sitting silently next to her. His hands trembled slightly, but he remained quiet. It was clear who held the power in this room. Savannah's latest scandal had become the family's latest crisis. She had cheated on her husband Cameron with his business partner. The affair had been going on for months, and now Cameron was filing for divorce. My sister was no stranger to drama, but this was beyond anything she'd done before. The Blackwell family was powerful, and they weren't going to let Savannah off easy. "You don't understand," I said, my voice tight with frustration. "I worked for years to buy this apartment. I sacrificed everything to afford it. I lived on ramen noodles and never went out to save for it. You want me to give all of that up for Savannah?" "Sophie, this isn't about you." My mother's voice grew colder, more authoritative. "This is about family. Savannah is your sister. You need to help her, especially now." I clenched my fists under the table, feeling the pressure of her words weigh on me. Savannah had always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong in my mother's eyes. I had always been the responsible one, the one who did the right thing, but never the one who got the attention. I shook my head. "No, I'm not selling my apartment." "You will," my mother shot back. "You're not just doing this for her, you're doing it for the family. We've all helped you. You owe us." I froze. The weight of her words felt suffocating. The idea that I owed them something because they had helped raise me, it twisted in my gut. I had spent so many years trying to build something for myself, something independent of them, and now they were asking me to destroy it. "I don't owe you anything," I said, standing up. "I worked for everything I have, and if you want me to help Savannah, you better figure it out yourself. I won't sell my apartment for this." My father cleared his throat, his voice hesitant. "Sophie, we're just trying to make sure Savannah is okay. You know how much this means to your mother." "You think Savannah deserves all of this?" I asked, my voice rising. "You know what she did. She had an affair with Trevor, his business partner, and now you expect me to sacrifice everything for her mistakes? No, I won't do it." "Your sister needs you," my mother pressed, standing up now, moving closer. "The Blackwell family will bury her without help. You can't let her go through this alone." I stared at my mother, then at my father, the two people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, but had never once supported my dreams. They were asking me to sacrifice everything for a sister who had never even asked for my help, who had always been given everything she wanted. But now they were pushing me too far. "No," I said again, shaking my head. "I'm done. If you want to help Savannah, you figure it out. I'm not part of this anymore." As I walked away from the table, I could feel the anger simmering beneath the surface. My heart pounded in my chest. This wasn't just about the apartment. It was about everything I had fought for, my independence, my future, and my family was trying to take it all away. But I knew something. I wouldn't, let them do this to me. The following days were nothing short of exhausting. I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had settled in my chest after the confrontation with my parents. Every time my phone rang, I half expected it to be my mother calling to guilt trip me again, or to remind me how selfish I was for not helping my sister. And sure enough, within 48 hours, the text messages started flooding in. Mom, Sophie, please, we need to talk. You're breaking our hearts. We're just asking for a little help. Dad, Sophie, don't let your mother down. This is your sister's future at stake. Savannah, too, had gotten involved, sending me long, frantic messages begging me to reconsider. I couldn't tell you how many times I read the same words over and over. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Please, I'm asking for your help. But all I could think about was how many times I had been ignored, overlooked, or simply dismissed by them when it came to my own life choices. I'd been the one to work tirelessly to build my future. I wasn't the one who had gotten to play the role of the perfect child, who had been lavished with gifts and attention while I worked my ass off to stay out of debt and make something of myself. And yet here I was, expected to clean up my sister's mess. The phone calls came next. Are you seriously going to let your sister suffer? My mother demanded, her voice shaking with frustration. She's been through enough. Her marriage is falling apart because of one mistake, and you're just going to let her lose everything? I'm not the one who had an affair, Mom, I replied, trying to keep my voice level. She made those choices, not me. I can't fix this for her. I could hear my mother's sigh, the one that always came when she felt her point wasn't getting across. Sophie, we're not asking you to solve her problems. Just help us get the legal fees covered. The Blackwells have money. They'll bury her in court if we don't act now. I paused, staring at the apartment that had come to define my independence. I've worked hard for this, Mom. I'm not going to give it up for a divorce. Her silence was suffocating. Then Savannah called. Hey, Soph. Her voice sounded strained, almost fragile. I know things are tense right now, but I'm begging you, please help me. I've messed up so badly. Cameron is going after everything I ever worked for. If I don't get the best lawyer, I'll be left with nothing. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. The truth was, I could see her fear. I knew she was in a tough spot, but at the same time, the bitterness in me wanted to scream. She had made her choices. She had chosen Trevor, had chosen to betray her husband, and now I was supposed to save her from the consequences of her actions. Savannah, I can't. I can't sell my apartment for this, I said firmly. I've been there for you in the past, but this isn't something I can do. Please, Sophie, don't you remember how hard it was for me when you bought this place? I was happy for you, but it was hard to watch you get everything you wanted when I had nothing. Her voice cracked. Please, help me now. There it was, the unspoken truth. Savannah had always resented me for my independence, for everything I'd worked for while she had everything handed to her. My apartment, the small piece of independence I'd earned, had become a symbol of everything she felt she lacked. But that didn't make it my responsibility. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my thoughts. I'm sorry, Savannah, I really am. But I can't help you with this. Not like this. You have to find another way. The silence that followed was heavy, pregnant with unspoken anger. Fine, she said, before hanging up abruptly. For a brief moment, I stood there, staring at the phone. The weight of everything, my family's expectations, their constant demands, felt unbearable. I had always been the one who kept my distance emotionally, but now, with them pushing so hard, it felt like they were suffocating me. Like they were trying to erase everything I had worked for. And then came the letter. The envelope was thick, the kind that held legal documents. It looked official, too official. My heart sank when I saw the return address. It was from a law firm, and it had my name on it. I opened it, my hands shaking, and the words inside hit me like a punch in the stomach. Dear Ms. Walker, this letter serves as a formal notice of the lawsuit being filed against you for the breach of family obligations and unjust enrichment. Your refusal to sell your property to fund the legal fees for your sister's divorce constitutes a violation of the implicit family contract you have with your parents, who have provided financial support to you over the years. Please be advised that your parents will pursue legal action to compel you to sell the property. We request a meeting to discuss the settlement terms. The words blurred in front of me. I couldn't breathe. A lawsuit? They were suing me for not selling my apartment? I laughed bitterly, the sound hollow. This was too much. I couldn't believe this was happening. My parents, whom I had tried to be there for, had actually resorted to this. They had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. I dropped the letter on the kitchen counter, staring at it in disbelief. My family was not just manipulative, they were desperate, and now I was going to have to fight back. The next few days were a blur of phone calls, lawyer meetings, and frantic paperwork. I couldn't escape the mounting sense of dread that settled deeper with each passing hour. My parents had taken their manipulation to a whole new level. They were suing me, their own daughter, to force me into selling my apartment to pay for my sister's divorce. I kept replaying the words of that legal letter over and over in my mind. Unjust enrichment. Breach of family obligations. It sounded like something out of a bad legal drama, but this was real. This was my life. The shock didn't wear off, but I knew I couldn't back down. This wasn't just about the apartment anymore. It was about something deeper. It was about the entire history of how my family had treated me, as if my success was theirs to exploit. How many times had they used me as their financial safety net? And now they were trying to force me into giving up everything I had worked for. I couldn't let them win. I called a lawyer, Rebecca Martinez, who came highly recommended by my boss. She specialized in family law, especially cases that involved unusual disputes like mine. When we met, I could see she was sharp and no nonsense. She barely looked up from her notes as I explained the situation, but she didn't need to ask for details. She had seen it all before. "This is insane," she said, finally breaking her silence. "You worked your ass off to buy this place. Your parents can't just claim a financial obligation because they helped raise you. That's not how it works." "You don't have to tell me that," I replied, pacing back and forth in her office. "But now they're suing me for not helping them. And my sister, she hasn't even apologized for what she did. She's never taken responsibility for her actions." Rebecca nodded, her face grim. "Your parents are exploiting their relationship with you. We'll fight this. Hard. We'll make sure they know exactly how far they've crossed the line." That was the plan, and I would see it through. The discovery phase of the case was exhausting. My parents' attorney demanded every financial record I had, all the paperwork from the purchase of my apartment, proof of my savings, and even receipts from the smallest purchases. Every corner of my life was being scrutinized, as if I had to prove I deserved what I had. But I didn't mind. I had nothing to hide. Every dollar I had saved, every hour I'd worked, was accounted for. I had built this life by myself. If they wanted proof of my independence, they would get it. The weeks dragged on, but it wasn't just the legal side that was exhausting. The emotional toll was worse. My parents kept calling, sending letters, and showing up at my apartment with one last plea. They seemed to think that if they could guilt me enough, I'd cave. Mom sent me a message, as usual, reminding me of how much they had given me over the years. "Mom, Sophie, we've done everything for you. You owe us this. If you help us now, we'll all get through this together. Don't let your sister lose everything." I was so tired of the manipulation, so tired of being told what I owed them, of being told that my success was somehow their success. I finally decided I had enough. I needed to confront my parents directly, so I called a family meeting. The meeting was scheduled for a Sunday afternoon at my parents' ranch-style house in Westerville. When I walked into the living room, I wasn't just facing my parents. My Aunt Dorothy and her husband Frank were there too, along with Savannah, who was sitting quietly in the corner, looking more like a fragile child than the confident woman she once was. Dad's face was grim, as always. He looked tired, worn down by the stress of the case. But my mother, she was on fire. Her eyes were blazing with the intensity of someone who couldn't fathom why I was refusing to help. "Good you're here," Dad said. "We need to strategize." "About what?" I replied, my voice cool. I wasn't playing along anymore. "About protecting Savannah's future," Mom said, her voice filled with urgency. "The Blackwell family has 3 law firms on retainer. We need comparable legal representation." I cut straight to the heart of the matter. "How much do we need?" $85,000, Aunt Dorothy said, her voice hesitant. "It's the only way to compete with them." $85,000? I echoed, incredulous. "And you want me to sell my apartment for that? You're asking me to give up everything I've worked for." Mom's voice took on a defensive edge. "This isn't about you, Sophie. This is about family. You owe it to your sister to help her through this." "No, I don't," I snapped. "I don't owe anyone anything." Silence followed, thick and suffocating. Everyone stared at me, expecting me to change my mind. Then Savannah spoke, her voice low, barely above a whisper. "Cameron wants the prenup to hold up completely. I'll get nothing if we go to court." The truth hung in the air, as heavy as the silence that followed. Savannah wasn't just losing her marriage. She was losing everything, and she knew it. But this wasn't my problem. She made those choices, not me. I looked around the room, my gaze landing on my parents. They had asked too much, and they were pushing me too far. "I'm not selling my apartment," I said firmly. "Find another way." You're being unreasonable, Sophie, Aunt Dorothy said, her voice tinged with disappointment. Family helps family in times of crisis. I've helped in every way I could, I shot back. But this is too much. I stood up, my decision made. I won't be part of this. I left the meeting, my heart pounding, my mind racing. The weight of everything, the lawsuit, the manipulation, the emotional blackmail, felt like it was finally catching up with me. But there was no turning back now. I had to fight, and I would. The days leading up to the court date felt like a slow, agonizing countdown. I spent most of my time preparing with Rebecca, my attorney. She was meticulous, and with each meeting, I felt a little more confident, a little more prepared for the battle ahead. But the closer we got to the courtroom, the heavier the weight on my shoulders became. I wasn't just fighting for my apartment. I was fighting for my dignity, for the future I had worked so hard to build. And more than that, I was fighting to take back control of my life from the toxic manipulations of my family. The day of the trial arrived, and the atmosphere in the courtroom was suffocating. My parents, along with their legal team, sat on one side. The entire Blackwell family, Cameron, his attorneys, and a few of their well-dressed friends were there too. They were all polished, with an air of superiority that grated against me. But it wasn't just them, it was Savannah. As I sat down, I looked across the courtroom at her. Her eyes were red-rimmed from crying, and she looked small in the sea of legal professionals and family members. She had always been the center of attention, the one everyone rushed to protect, but now she was nothing more than a victim in the eyes of our parents. And it seemed like everyone in that room was just waiting for me to cave, to make a sacrifice for her. I wasn't going to. Rebecca squeezed my hand as we prepared for the first round of questioning. "You're ready for this," she said quietly. "Just stay focused. We've got this." The first witness was my mother, and her testimony was as manipulative as I had expected. She painted a picture of a daughter who had always been there, always supporting me, and now, when they needed me most, I was turning my back on them. She made it sound like I was abandoning them, as if my refusal to help them financially meant I was failing as a daughter. Her words felt like daggers. She spoke about all the sacrifices they made for me, how they had helped me pay for college, how they had provided me with a roof over my head when I was younger. And now, she claimed, it was my turn to return the favor. I bit my tongue, fighting back the urge to scream. She wasn't telling the truth. My parents had never been there for me in the ways she was claiming. They hadn't helped with college expenses or bought me anything substantial. Everything I had earned myself. Rebecca stood up to cross-examine her. "Isn't it true, Mrs. Walker, that Sophie has always been financially independent?" she asked, her tone sharp. "That she's paid for everything on her own without asking for help from you or your husband?" My mother hesitated. "Well, yes, but—" "And isn't it true that Sophie has been working full-time since she was 18, saving every penny to buy her own apartment, and that you've never contributed to her savings or her purchase?" The room was still. My mother shifted uncomfortably in her seat, but Rebecca didn't give her a chance to recover. "And isn't it true that Sophie's financial success has always been seen as a source of pride for you, but only as long as it served your needs?" My mother's face reddened. She stammered but couldn't answer. "No further questions, Your Honor," Rebecca said, sitting back down with a calm confidence. I couldn't help but feel a small sense of victory. Rebecca's questions had hit the nail on the head. My mother had been trying to rewrite the narrative, to make it seem like I owed them for everything they'd given me. But the truth was clear. I owed them nothing. I had earned every step of my success. Next, it was my father's turn. I could see him in the witness box, his face grim, trying to maintain his composure. Dad had always been the quieter one, the one who deferred to my mother's decisions. He spoke in vague terms about how families should help one another, how this was a time of crisis for Savannah, and how I should step up as the good daughter. Rebecca was just as sharp with him as she had been with my mother. "Mr. Walker, isn't it true that you've never been financially stable, that you've had trouble holding down jobs, and that your credit card debt has been an ongoing issue?" The question hit him like a punch to the gut. I saw him shift in his seat, uncomfortable with the truth being laid bare. Rebecca didn't stop. "And isn't it true that for years, Sophie has been the one to keep herself financially afloat, never asking for your help?" He didn't answer. He simply stared at the ground. "No further questions, Your Honor." Rebecca sat down, her expression calm, but I could see the satisfaction in her eyes. She had exposed the financial truth of our family. My parents had never truly supported me, and now they were trying to manipulate me into sacrificing everything I had built for their own mistakes. Finally, Savannah took the stand. She was dressed in a conservative outfit, a far cry from her usual glamorous style, and her eyes were red from crying. As she began speaking, her voice wavered, but she quickly regained control, launching into her sob story. Cameron, he's going after everything. He wants to destroy me. I'll lose everything if I don't get a good lawyer. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. I never meant to hurt anyone. Her words were designed to elicit sympathy, and for a moment, part of me felt sorry for her. But then I remembered everything she had done, everything she had chosen. Rebecca stood up. Savannah, is it true that you had an affair with Trevor, your husband's business partner? She paused, her gaze flickering with guilt. Yes, but it was over now. It was a mistake. A mistake? Rebecca pressed. You had an affair for 8 months. You betrayed your husband, and now, because of your actions, you're asking your sister to give up her home to cover your divorce fees. Is that correct? Savannah's eyes filled with tears, but she didn't answer the question. She simply let the tears fall, hoping they would soften the blow. Rebecca wasn't done. Do you take any responsibility for the affair? Savannah's anger flared. I fell in love with someone who actually cared about me. What's wrong with that? But you violated your marriage vows, did you not? Rebecca's voice was steady. You caused this destruction yourself, and now you expect your sister to pay for it. Is that what you're asking? Savannah's tears turned to pure fury, and for a moment I could see the real Savannah, the one who had always gotten away with everything, the one who expected the world to bend to her will. I stood in the back of the courtroom, watching her unravel. I couldn't believe I had once looked up to her, wished I could be like her, but now all I saw was someone who had never learned to take responsibility for her actions. The judge called for a recess. My head was spinning, but I knew one thing. I was done letting them manipulate me. I would fight this to the end. The weeks that followed the court proceedings were a whirlwind of emotions. The case dragged on longer than I expected, but it wasn't just the legal battles that weighed on me. It was the emotional toll. The trial had exposed the raw, unhealed wounds in my family, and despite the judge's eventual ruling in my favor, I couldn't escape the fallout. My parents didn't take the defeat well. Their fury was palpable, and they weren't afraid to show it. The once familiar sense of family unity had cracked wide open. Every conversation I had with them after the verdict felt like a battle. It was a Wednesday when my mother finally called. I had barely seen her since the trial ended, and frankly, I was dreading it. Sophie, her voice sounded smaller than usual, tired. We lost, and you know it. Now we're in trouble. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to steady myself. I already knew what she was going to say. The house was on the line, and my parents were once again trying to drag me into their mess. What do you want, Mom? I asked, keeping my tone even. We're losing the house, she said, her voice breaking slightly. I don't know what else to do. We can't pay off the loans, the court fees, and all the debts. We need help, Sophie. You're the only one who can fix this. I felt the anger rising, but I kept it under control. I'm not going to help you again, I said, my voice firm. You sued me, remember? You tried to take everything I had. Now, you want me to bail you out? I can't keep doing this. You can't just turn your back on us. Her voice was desperate, pleading. This is your family, Sophie. Your father is losing his job, and I don't know what to do. I paused, trying to take it all in. This was the same story I had heard my whole life. They couldn't manage their finances, couldn't stick to a plan, and now, when their world came crashing down, it was my responsibility to fix it. I exhaled slowly, fighting the wave of frustration and guilt that threatened to rise in me. I'm sorry, Mom. I can't help you this time. I'm not your safety net anymore. She didn't answer at first. There was a long silence on the other end of the line, and when she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. You've changed, Sophie. You're not the same person you used to be. I closed my eyes, feeling the sting of her words. But I had changed. I had to change. If I didn't, I'd continue to let them use me as their scapegoat, their fixer, and their emotional crutch. I have to go, I said quietly. Goodbye, Mom. I hung up before she could say anything else. Savannah didn't reach out immediately. The weeks after the verdict passed in silence, with her seemingly trying to navigate her own mess. The gossip about the trial had spread like wildfire through our social circle, and even though some people sympathized with her, many saw through the facade. I heard through the grapevine that Savannah had moved back in with my parents, but she wasn't working, at least not consistently. She had gotten a job at Nordstrom, but the reports were that she had quit after just a few weeks, claiming retail work was beneath her. The phone call from Kyle, my best friend, came 3 months later when things had started to settle. Sophie, I don't know how to tell you this, but Savannah's pregnant. The news hit me like a punch in the gut. What? I couldn't believe it. Who's the father? Some married guy she's been seeing. The same one who was in her life when everything fell apart with Cameron. He's not leaving his wife for her. The word karma echoed in my head, but I didn't say it out loud. I couldn't help but feel the weight of it. Savannah had gotten everything she wanted, and now she was left with nothing. I didn't know how to feel. Part of me felt pity for the baby. A child born into chaos, born to parents who couldn't even get their lives together. But part of me also understood the harsh truth. This was her choice. This was the consequence of everything she had done. I distanced myself further from my family in the months that followed. My relationship with them was fractured beyond repair, and I didn't feel guilty anymore. They had shown me who they were in the most painful, public way possible. They had used me, and I had let them. But not anymore. It was 3 months later when I received the call from Aunt Dorothy. She wanted to meet in person. Sophie, she said quietly as we sat down at a small cafe in the city. I don't know how to say this, but your parents, they're in deep financial trouble. They took out high-interest loans to pay for Savannah's legal fees, their own attorney fees, and now they're going to lose the house. I looked at her, a tightness in my chest. They brought this on themselves. They sued me. They tried to make me sacrifice everything for Savannah's mistakes. Dorothy looked away, her face filled with regret. I know, and I was wrong to side with them. I should have known better, but now they need help. Frank and we've given them $35,000. We can't do any more. I let out a long breath. I had learned a lot during this entire mess. What happened next was on them, not me. I'm sorry, Aunt Dorothy, but I can't do it. They've made their choices. They'll have to figure it out on their own. Her face fell, but she nodded, silently acknowledging my decision. It wasn't the one she wanted, but it was the one that had to be made. A month later, I received an update from Kyle. Your parents lost the house. It wasn't a surprise. I wasn't shocked, nor was I happy. It was simply the natural consequence of their actions. The foreclosure notice came in, and my parents had to move into a small, crumbling apartment in the worst part of town. Savannah stayed with them. She had the baby, a girl named Destiny, but the man who had fathered her left immediately after the birth, just like I had suspected. Savannah's life had spiraled completely out of control. I stayed away. I stayed focused on my own life. And for the first time, I felt something I hadn't in years. Peace. My grandmother passed away later that year. She left me a substantial inheritance, and for the first time, I felt as if the universe was affirming my choices. Her will stated simply, "You were the only one who stood up for yourself. I'm proud of you." I took the money and used it to buy a small rental property. It wasn't a huge step, but it was mine, just like my apartment had been. It was a foundation, something that couldn't be taken away. It was the life I had built, and I wasn't going to let anyone tear it down. Months passed, and I heard occasional updates from mutual acquaintances about my parents and Savannah. It was the same story over and over. Destiny was growing up in a chaotic, unstable home. My parents were struggling financially, and Savannah was still bouncing from one failed relationship to the next. But none of it affected me anymore. I had built my life on my own terms, and I didn't need to feel responsible for people who had never shown me real love, only a desire to exploit me. Would I have helped them? Perhaps. But I knew this was the only way to protect myself, to stay true to who I had become. It's been 3 years since the trial, and everything has changed. My life is calm, steady, and built on a foundation of financial independence and emotional resilience. I wake up every morning in my own home, knowing I can rely on myself. My apartment, once a symbol of everything my family wanted from me, is now a sanctuary I've made entirely my own. The world I had walked away from, the world of guilt, manipulation, and unrealistic expectations, feels like a distant memory now. But the journey to get here, to truly detach from the toxic hold my family had on me, wasn't easy. It wasn't just about the legal battle, but about learning to let go of the emotional debt they had been collecting from me for years. When I got that inheritance from Grandma, I knew it was more than just money. It was a sign that I had done the right thing, that choosing to cut myself off from their demands, from their self-serving manipulations, was not only justified, but necessary for my survival. I invested the money wisely. I bought a rental property, just a small one, but it's mine. I've been slowly fixing it up and managing the tenants, learning more about real estate and business with every passing day. The lessons I've learned from my family about how not to run a business, how not to live a life, have been invaluable. I no longer fear making mistakes. I embrace them as part of the process. I don't hear much from Savannah anymore. After the birth of her daughter Destiny, her life fell into a spiral of chaotic relationships and failed attempts at starting over. Cameron Blackwell, her ex-husband, never looked back. She had tried to get back in touch with me a few times, but I never responded. It wasn't out of cruelty. It was out of necessity. I don't need to be dragged back into that whirlwind of chaos. She has to take responsibility for the mess she created. I can't keep picking up the pieces. The best thing I can do for her, for all of them, is to let them face the consequences of their actions. And what happened to my parents? I'm sure they're still dealing with the fallout from the lawsuit and their failed financial ventures. They lost the house, of course, and ended up in a cramped apartment. Dad's health has been declining, and my mom has started working retail to make ends meet. I heard through Aunt Dorothy that they've had to rely on high-interest loans to stay afloat, but frankly, I stopped caring. The truth is, they never understood what it meant to take responsibility for their own mistakes. They didn't want to. They just wanted me to fix things for them. Now they're on their own. I occasionally hear updates from Kyle, my best friend. He tells me about how my parents are still trying to manipulate people into feeling sorry for them, trying to use the family guilt card to get help. Some people still believe them, but most people who matter can see through their lies. They made their bed. Now they have to lie in it. My life is peaceful now. My relationships are stronger, clearer. I've learned to set boundaries. The people I've kept in my life are the ones who value me for who I am, not for what I can give them, not for what they can take from me. And now, as I sit in my office, preparing for another day of work, I realize how far I've come. I'm no longer the girl who was afraid of disappointing her family. I'm the woman who is building her future, brick by brick, with purpose and clarity. I still think about Destiny, my niece. She's growing up, and while I've seen a few pictures through social media, I don't feel the pull to rescue her from the chaos. It's not my responsibility. I'm not her savior. But there's part of me that hopes she finds her way, finds stability, love, and peace that I never had growing up. Maybe she'll find it with someone who can teach her what real love looks like, someone who will guide her, not use her, someone who will give her the chance to live a better life than the one her mother created for her. Would I make the same choices again? Absolutely, because the alternative was letting them destroy my financial future to put my security at risk, just to delay the consequences of their actions. Some boundaries once crossed can't be uncrossed. Some betrayals are too deep to forgive, especially when there's never been an apology. My apartment, the one they wanted me to sell, has grown in value, and it's become more than just my home. It's a symbol of my independence from people who confuse love with exploitation. And that lesson? It was worth every penny I refused to give them. Now, as I look at the life I've built, I know I did the right thing. My family may never understand it, but I don't need them to. I've learned that the most loving thing I can do for myself is say no to the people who would drag me down. And sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for others is let them face the consequences of their own choices.